Greetings, members, one and all of the Salivation Nation. When we think of gold and silver, most of us envision coins, gold and silver coins. In fact, the gold American Eagle and the silver American Eagle here in the United States are what comes to mind first. Of course, premiums in those pieces are very, very high right now, especially the silver Eagles. But what's stamped on those coins are images of circulating coins of days gone past. And that is the foundation of where we should be thinking here, folks, because gold and silver were actually transacted as money not that long ago in the grand scheme of United States history. And by any measure of world history, we are living in a time where it is unusual for the short amount of time that we've not been transacting with gold and silver as money. So we should let gold and silver essentially guide us through our financial and fiscal decision making. Now, does that mean going all in on gold and silver? No, it does not. We have to live within the boundaries that are assigned to us in terms of transactions and the like, and the fluctuating futures markets and spot price. You know, those things are going to dictate a lot. And price does matter when it comes to gold and silver. But when we buy our 1 ounce gold and 1 ounce silver coins, we have to budget. We have to set aside money in order to make that happen in any given amount. Now, those are just examples because we think about coins, silver bullion coins or gold bullion coins. And you can insert any nation in this video. The Britannias, the Kookaburras, the all sorts of different countries, the Libertads, you name it. Most of the most important nations around the world actually have some sort of bullion coin out there. There are exceptions, and there are also some surprises with some of these smaller island nations that have some of the bigger mints, like the Perth Mint produce them for them. It's kind of amazing to see. There's a greater variety now of gold and silver coins than ever before in world history, even though they aren't transacted as money. Let that sink in for a moment. That is something that should help guide you in your decision making. You know, when we buy gold and silver, we hang on to it because we know that holding on to it leads to the benefit of time. And time elapses with inflation. All nations around the world are experiencing it right now and reeling from it at this point. It is out of control to some extent. They're trying to rein it in. They're trying to use their tools, these central banks are, but it's going to take a while. And we know that it's also going to take a while in some cases for gold and silver to catch up with inflation, depending on when and how you buy gold and silver. But that's why you must let that guide you. You must let these metals guide you. And so let's take a look at some gold and silver in a different form. You can see here, this is an example of large kilo-size silver and gold bars from My Gold New Zealand provide this footage for this video. And this is something that most of us cannot obtain. At least anybody that I know in this community, I don't know of anybody who has a kilo-size gold bar. Now, kilo-size silver bars are much more manageable to get, but even those can be tough for a lot of people to get. I've only just recently acquired some kilo-sized silver bars, but they are beautiful. The gold and silver that you see here is remarkable, and these are samples and examples that can be bought in the markets today. Most people, they have the ability to do it if they have the money to do so, if they can afford to do it. But nonetheless, when you think in terms of value, there's a lot of value packed in a small, tight space that you see here. That, to me, is remarkable to think about. It's amazing that it has stood the test of time, gold and silver have. And that is the point of this message. History really should be your guide in everyday life. You know, history may not completely repeat, but oftentimes it does rhyme. Gold and silver indeed do provide a sense of store of value through the course of history. And that will never change, no matter what kind of technological advances are out there. there's a lot of mining of gold and silver, and technology is assisting in the accumulation of gold and silver out of the earth into refineries around the world, and eventually into strategic stockpiles for use for industry and for precious metals, or for minting of coins and bars and rounds, and also for central banks to hold gold. And that is the guide. We see what these other entities are doing, mainly the central banks, and a lot of us rail against central banks. They are certainly tightening their grip on control of us with central bank digital currencies on the horizon. It's only a matter of time before we start to see technology work against us in that regard. And yet they hold gold. They hold gold to enable to provide themselves legitimacy in the global marketplace and in the geopolitical sphere. You and I, we can indeed have legitimacy as well by holding gold and silver in terms of influence in the marketplace and the geopolitical sphere. We have value for our individual freedom and rights. And that individual freedom and rights is something that is sacrosanct and transcends political boundaries, in my view. Even if you live in a country where they may not have a First or Second Amendment, in other words, the freedom of speech and the right to keep and bear arms, you know that every time you buy gold and silver, you are providing an avenue from which you can transact, if need be, if the situation were ever to arise, where you can be a power broker to be able to make that happen in the case of an emergency. Even not in an emergency, it's good to have them to store so that you can essentially set aside a savings account, an illiquid savings account. What do I mean by that? Well, cash on hand is liquid, very liquid. You can take it down to your bank, to a grocery store, and pretty much to anybody to trade for goods and services. It is the ultimate in fungibility, the cash or the currency of your nation, the currency of the realm. Well, you can also do the same thing with gold and silver, but it takes a little bit more work, which is why having it on hand essentially provides a buffer of liquidity so that you're saving, and it's providing as an insurance policy as well in times of a currency crisis that could come, or even if it doesn't come. It's going to do well in times of inflation or economic hardship, or at the tail end of recessions. Gold and silver will do well. And what does that mean? It means they will preserve their wealth over the course of a long period of time, especially if you've been buying it on the regular. In other words, dollar cost averaging, or a variation of dollar cost averaging, which I refer to as smart dollar cost averaging, where you buy a little bit more gold and a little bit more silver when the prices take a dip and the premiums are reflected in that dip, or a little bit less or not at all if the price just dramatically spikes up on any given day. Usually when there's a big spike in gold and silver prices, there is a correction. And so there's a time to buy and a time not to buy. But I believe in this day and age, there's always a time to hold. And that's why we let gold and silver be our guide in these times, because you never know. You never know what might come around the corner, where you holding on to your gold and silver will be the best thing that you probably could have ever done in this present crisis that we are going through. What kind of crisis are we talking about? Well, we have an inflation crisis, no question about it. The highest inflation even now in about 40 years. And we also have a geopolitical crisis with wars and rumors of wars bantering about. We have the situation in China and Taiwan, which is coming to a head. Some people feel we could see action there before the presidential election. You've got the situation where Russia has invaded Ukraine, and that is causing a lot of geopolitical strife and also affecting supply chains, fuel costs, and the like. And then you also have inflation in nations around the world right now that is out of control, and fears of a deepening and widening recession that very well could come down the pike. And you also have employment crisis around the world, where either people aren't willing to work, or they're looking for work, or they're not filling jobs for one reason or another. There's a lot of different things on hand at play here, for sure, that are leading to a situation where we could run into a deepening crisis in any of those things that I've just mentioned, or a combination thereof. So this is why having a sense of stability is paramount. And we can't control what the Federal Reserve or what central banks do to further weaken the value of our cash. We know by design it goes down year by year by at least 2% here in the United States. But what we can do is provide stability by holding on to our gold and silver and buying it smartly. And so therefore, it's incumbent upon all of us to hold fast, be encouraged that you're doing the right thing by having gold and silver. And in these times, it's good to let gold and silver be your guide. I hope you found this video informative, insightful, and educational. I'd like to extend a multitude of gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time to watch, and encourage you to please rate, share, comment, and subscribe.